Welcome back. The IFP says it's reached a deal with the ANC to go into a working agreement in hung municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal. The IFP will form a government where it has the majority seats and the ANC will do the same, it says. Let's discuss this now with Power to Truth host, Dr. JJ Tabane. JJ, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
You know, the president of the IFP, Velinkosi Tlabisa, was at pains to point out that this is not a, inverted commas, coalition, right? It's a working agreement, he says, because they're not going to interfere when the ANC is in power in any municipality where they vote for their mayors. So what is it then?
Well, it's a coalition. A coalition is not what you say, it's what you do, right? It's co-governing. First of all, you need to get into power. So it sounds like the EFF. I mean, only somebody who really is having was half asleep will believe that EFF was not in coalition with the DA. They were. They just did not take up office. But they made sure that they enabled the DA to govern. So that's what a coalition means. Formally, they're not a coalition in that they could vote differently and whatever else. I'll tell you why Tlabisa was at pains to say it's not a coalition. Because he had already put himself in a corner. Remember, he was trumpeting from a mountaintop to say, we're not going to work with the ANC and so on. Which was quite a surprise. Because remember, the IFP is a chip of the old block, honestly. I mean, the IFP was formed as a cultural wing of the ANC. Let's just remember. Right? So it was always going to be difficult for them to disengage completely and go to the opposite and make it difficult for the ANC to govern. So they cut a good deal for themselves because they'll be able to govern certain municipalities by themselves and get the ANC to govern others. So it's just a modality now of the coalition. Govern here, I'll govern there, but I'll make sure you are in power. In other words, I'll vote for your candidate to be power. What's better than that's even better than a coalition. So in fact, they are going into coalition. The modalities are different in that if there are two municipalities, I govern here, you govern there, instead of us having a mixed bag of MMCs in each of the councils.
All right, but what happens when you have an agreement like that, where the IFP will say, okay, in eThekwini we're going to vote for your mayor, but we're not going to be involved with how you run the municipality. What happens when the ANC is trying to do things and as an opposition, technically, and the benches there, that they don't agree with? Does it not lead to a breakdown of this agreement eventually?
It does, because remember, when they say it's a cooperative agreement, first of all, they're not going to sign anything that binds them, right? They're just agreeing to put you in power, but any time that you mess them around, they can get you out of power. But the risk of that is that they can also get you out of power in the other municipalities where you are governing. So in a sense, it does keep them in check, so to speak, like any other, like what do you happen with the EFF?
That doesn't seem like it's in the interest of the people, though, because it's just a deal. You let us lead here, we'll let you lead.
Come on, Shahan. In the interest of the people. At this rate, the politicians are thinking about themselves. They're thinking who's going to be mayor, who's going to be MMC. The people will come eventually. Or rather, let me say, maybe it's taken for granted that they are doing all these things for the people. They'll always argue that way. But at the end of it, it's about power. It's about political power. Why do you think there's a deadlock in Johannesburg? Because even though Mashawa denies it now to me, and I've just been on the phone to him just to get an update of what's going on, right? Action SA wants to govern Johannesburg, right? So by extension, Mashaba. But he says, no, it could be anybody. But at the end of the day, they got 16%, but they want to negotiate in such a way that they come across as people who want 51%. And that's how politics are, right? So in the case of Joburg and Pretoria, the EFF came to them with a deal where they were carrying the ANC on their back and saying, please, can you agree that the ANC should govern Joburg, we will govern Pretoria, and then Action SA govern Ekurhuleni. That was the deal that the EFF took on their place. Action SA rejected that, right? So you can see it's all a power play. Who's going to be in charge? Joburg has a budget of what? 50-something odd billion that has to be spent. And you know these people want to steal that money, all of them. You know, some more than others, you know. So that's what you need to understand here. This is a power play. The reason we have these hung municipalities is because the people are generally fed up. They don't trust any of these parties to govern outright. And in order for them to listen to the people, they have to work together. Otherwise, woe unto us. We need to go to another election prematurely, which is what's called a runoff or by-election. And frankly, we don't want that. We don't want to risk that, especially with the kind of poor outcome that we have seen in these past elections.
So are you expecting other parties who were also shouting from hilltops that they're not going to work with the ANC to make this U-turn and then say, oh, we've reached an agreement, but it's not a coalition?
That's how it works. you should have listened to Mzwane Leman yesterday, the ATM. I don't know what 0.something% they've got. But he still said, no, they can work with the ANC in order to rehabilitate them. I mean, honestly, you got to be joking. Eh? They'll say, oh, they'll change them in the meantime. So everyone will find a reason why they have to backtrack, because it's not a good idea. And I said this to John Steenhuisen at the Rock. It's not a good idea to pronounce ahead of time, even ahead of the elections being pronounced, who you can or cannot work with. The ANC and the DA have worked together many times in previous elections, in various municipalities around the country on coalition. Right? So it's not an unlikely partnership. You and I would have sworn, if we were speaking ahead of the 2016 coalition agreements, we would have sworn EFF will never work with the DA. They are in extreme, they're like these red and blue pillars on the extreme side of each other. But they did. Right? So nothing is impossible. Even with the ANC and Action SA, I think that Action SA painted itself into a corner unnecessarily. Because as a small party, part of what they could do to get into government is to coalesce with the ANC, select which portfolios they want, and make a good of those. The ANC will expose itself if they are there to steal. Yeah. They do their job as MMCs with the necessary authority, with the authority of council, with a predetermined coalition agreement, where I agree with the DA is that they need to, these things must be signed. So that there's no manga business of, oh, vote of no confidence. That vote of no confidence, we have lost confidence in that phrase or what it means. It just means if I don't like you today and I wake up, as they say in my language, if you wake up with the left hand, I just say you're no longer mayor. I mean, we can't work like that. I mean, this is play marbles with the future of people.
Yeah, definitely should be a public agreement, right? Last question, and very quickly, is just regarding how these politicians have these discussions behind closed doors.
Sure.
Because, you know, many of us would think it's very civil and, you know, we want to sign an agreement, what. But what are you hearing? Because you are speaking to the politicians on the telephone, and they're telling you about
it. No, it's very civil. Don't be fooled by politicians, fire and brimstone in public and what. When they close the door, they're actually friends. Some of them, there are people may kill each other outside when they're having tea inside. So at the end of the day, some of them are cordial, some of them are friends. Remember, I mean, if you look at the political landscape, I mean, half of these parties are from the ANC. EFF is from the ANC, COPE is from the ANC, ATM is from the ANC, IFP was a culture. They know each other from far. They drink together, some of these people. Some of them they are even intermarried and so on. There are people who are in marriages where somebody's EFF, somebody's ANC. They don't want to kill each other. They're not about to do that, right? But outside, their supporters must see them as revolutionary and hardcore and what. But when the door is closed, like IFP and ANC, they come and tell us, no, we're going to cooperate, but it's not a coalition. Please believe us.
Yeah.
So you need to always take what the politicians say with a bag of salt. Don't believe everything you see or read in a newspaper.
Yeah, so they all deserve Oscars, basically.
They deserve each other, I think, generally.
Yeah. All right, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. JJ Tabane, of course, host of Power to Truth. You'll check him out later on tonight at 8 o'clock with his show.